Hi folks, my name is Zoe and you're listening to Souwie On. I'm a journalist based here in Europe, and this podblog dives into a range of fascinating, sometimes controversial, contemporary issues, from migration to prostitution, ex-Muslims to humanism. We tackle questions from a first-person perspective. Perhaps more unusual, this podblog also explores solutions. Now, this doesn't mean I have all the answers or that we don't allow ourselves a laugh or two along the way, but it does mean I'm not wallowing in despair at the state of the world. Listen in and let me know if you like it. Seven out of 10 Europeans believes that their country takes in too many migrants. Now, this is according to a recent survey by French-German TV programme Art Europe Weekly. A global pandemic, followed by two ongoing wars in Ukraine and the Middle East, have created a cost of living crisis across the continent and a massive movement of people into Europe. Far-right parties across the bloc have capitalized on voter fears and dominated the issue of migration with strong us versus them rhetoric. The response from the mainstream political establishment has been tepid, even fearful, at both national and European level. It's a topic no self-respecting politician wants to touch, a PR minefield. But, as Chief of Public Data at YouGov, Marcus Roberts points out in a recent discussion on Eurofile, ignoring the issue will not make it go away.
There's some very real issues associated with extraordinary growth in refugee numbers, extraordinary growth in economic migrant numbers, serious pressure, understandable pressure on wages and public services that leads to very logical, very rational reactions on the part of voters who say to governments, do you have control over this issue? And this is critical because all of our data shows that the question of control is far more important than the question of numbers. It's the sense that the numbers are out of control because there's no limit to them that drives a lot of concern on the part of voters, rather than the sense that this number is particularly high or this number is in a different place. And that's because mainstream politicians for a long time have failed to prosecute an argument that they are in control of their countries, their borders, their immigration policies, their refugee policies.
One of those tasked with taking control on a Europe-wide level is Commissioner for Democracy and Demography, Dubravka Šuica. As Europe's aging population continues to grow, she warns that Europe is on the brink of a demographic revolution.
When we talk about migration, sometimes it becomes a sensitive issue, but I think, this is my personal opinion, without managing legal migrations, we wouldn't be able to solve this demographic problem in Europe, because according to predictions in 2070, Europe will be only 4% of world population. So we have to put this into balance, and this is the reason why we are interested in global demography.
Strangely, the less explosive but closely related issue of demographic change has received far less coverage. Europe is facing a silver tsunami. Dropping birth rates and longer life expectancy means that by the 2050s, 1/3 of Europeans will be over 65 years old. The 2024 Aging Report from the European Commission predicts that the labour force in Europe will decrease by 12% between 2022 and 2070. What's more, in several member states, the labour force could shrink by more than 25% by 2070. Security is the main focus of a new European Migration Pact recently agreed in Brussels. Yet, as EU Commissioner for Home Affairs, Jyvle Jonasson, agreed in a recent interview for Euronews, Europe needs migrants.
The other important thing we need to do is to step up on legal migration. We are an aging society in Europe. We need migrants, but they have to come in an orderly way.
This might well be the case, but the on-the-ground reality for many migrants and refugees is difficult. A recent investigation called Brain Waste by a group of media outlets, including El País, the Financial Times, and Lighthouse Reports, showed that almost half of college-educated migrants in Europe are overqualified for the jobs they are doing, and nearly twice as likely to be unemployed. What's more, their findings showed that migrant women face even higher rates of unemployment. They calculated that the cost of the structural discrimination is enormous. If migrants worked the same jobs and earned the same wages as native workers, the European economy could grow by a staggering 33 billion euros. Moreover, a decade of accelerated degree recognition programs, touted as a quick fix to this enormous waste, have in reality changed little. So, on this episode of Souwie On, I speak with Cristina Moreno. A woman of migrant background herself, she founded an organization called She Matters. Her desire to help female migrants in the Netherlands find employment commensurate with their skills led her to create a project that is now in its 7th year and has the buy-in of multinationals like Salesforce and Nike, not to mention the interest of both the French and Belgian governments.
Basically, long story short, for 12 years, I worked full time at a call center, enrolled in school at night and was a mom, but went from being, a teenage mom living in poverty with no skills, nothing, to up until March 2018, being an international lawyer in The Hague.
Cristina grew up as a 4th-generation Mexican-American. She left high school at 16 and was a single mother before her 18th birthday. Her chances, as she tells me, were slim. But inspiration came from an unexpected source and would help her tap into unknown reserves of strength and perseverance that would ultimately catapult her into an entirely different life.
The moment that changed my life is when my caseworker at the social benefits office said to me, "Cristina, we need to get you a job." And I said, I always wanted to be a lawyer, because I really always did, and instead of, I think, what I was hoping for from her was motivation or encouragement, and instead she left and said, "Sorry, that's not going to work out for you anymore." And she literally handed me a stack of applications to the grocery store and said, they need cashiers.
These are your options.
These are exactly. And I remember, of course, I was a young girl. I remember thinking, she's right, that my life is completely different and this is what it is now. But then a moment later, just saying, wait a minute, this, I have one life. I don't have much in my life, but I have my life and this is mine and that is no one else's. And I really thank her because she motivated me to change my life.
After being selected to be the summer associate at an Amsterdam law firm that was working on the Mothers of Srebrenica case, Cristina would go on to accept a job in The Hague, practicing as an international lawyer. Yet there was more in store for her. An invitation to give a talk about her experiences as an international lawyer who had herself struggled with poverty and a migrant background would bring her into contact with a small group of female refugees from Syria and Afghanistan.
And then I met with these women, and they just, it changed my life because I first of all, it was supposed to be coffee. I think I told you. It was supposed to be coffee, and all 3 women had just a table full of food for me, and I was so humbled every single time. And they were telling me everything that they had been through, and I was moved to tears. I couldn't imagine that. Being in their shoes. I couldn't imagine, for instance, being locked up in a room for weeks and not being able to feed your baby because you don't have nutrients, you don't have food to feed your child. So I was crying, I was moved because what I was seeing in front of me, it wasn't pity. It was actually, I think, quite beautiful. It was seeing such strength in the human spirit. I was just moved. So after I would say, what's next for you? And they would all say to me, I want a job.
Cristina clearly remembers the pride her own grandmother took in the job she had, sorting pistachio nuts at a factory in California.
And my grandmother, I love her to death. She's amazing. She's been in the United States forever. She doesn't speak English. I just love her. My grandma Delma. So she lives in California. And when I was there as a child living there, we would visit her almost every weekend, her and my grandfather. And I don't know why, but I would always just gravitate towards her, and I would follow her during the day. And she just to me was just this beautiful woman. And I remember, I think I was 6 years old, 7. I remember when it would start to get dark outside, she would go take a shower and she would get ready to go to work. And keep in mind, I was a young girl, so I didn't know. I thought because she had taken such good care of herself when she was getting ready, I would sit on her bed, and I remember just looking at her, and she applied her makeup so precisely and with such care. And I really thought that she was a president of a company, that she was this important person because of the care that she put into her getting ready. It wasn't until later that I found out from my mother that my grandmother worked at a pistachio company, and she worked the night shift. So that for me taught me at a very young age, what does a job do to you? And it gives you so much pride, right? It gives you somewhere to go. It gives you a paycheck. It gives you self-esteem.
Yeah, of course.
So Cristina founded She Matters. She knew she wanted to help find employment for these refugee women who she had met and all those who she had yet to meet but knew were out there. There was just one problem.
So months went on. I founded She Matters, and I knew, employment. And I thought, training, a 12-week Lotus Flower program.
Yes.
We're going to start the pilot. I took out my savings, to run it. And we had like a really small website, open a Facebook page. And I really thought, because I did meet some women, but and they were saying, the women in my community, really thought that they would come flooding in and saying, oh, this is great. Yeah. I had one woman registered for the program a week before we were going to start. And I panicked because, again, I took a big gamble. At the time I left my job, I took out my savings. It was and I thought, oh my gosh, how is this possible?
So she went to the parks and the playgrounds. She bribed people with food, understanding that she would have to win their trust. Finally, by the end of the first 12-week pilot program, she had 7 participants and more who were eager to join. And so She Matters NGO was born. Each 12-week Lotus Flower program is designed to provide the 10 women who attend with the soft skills necessary to function effectively in the workplace. Research shows that companies are concerned first and foremost about how employees will integrate into the workplace. So it often comes down to basics like interview skills, a firm handshake, and looking someone directly in the eye when talking to them.
We want to have a paradigm shift when it comes to refugees.
The way that we view.
Yeah. For me, and what She Matters stands for is the women for us we feel are the key to releasing the untapped potential for our economy.
She Matters works with large corporates like Salesforce Netherlands, who sponsor these training sessions. Once the women graduate from the training course, they switch over to the recruitment side of She Matters. Here, they are placed with the company in the manner of a normal recruitment agency. Cristina describes this as a social enterprise that is for profit, but also for social impact. She admits that for many companies, the idea of hiring a refugee outside of the traditional corporate social responsibility framework is new and takes some adjustment. But this Latina powerhouse is clearly adept at leveraging a range of public and private expertise in order to further the impact of She Matters.
think the city has risen to the occasion in wonderful ways, and for me is a real proof point for a very different way the country can look at this challenge, which is really not a crisis, but an opportunity. And in most cities, I found that to be true. When I talk to a lot of Midwestern cities that have dying populations, they are desperate for new workers and for new residents. They would love to have folks arrive if those individuals come with work authorization. If they can work to support themselves, they're an asset to your community. If they can't, and they have to rely on public services, they're a cost to your community. So this is, we think, what we're trying to shift is how do we move people from being costs to being what they want to be, which is assets to help the community. And if they can work, they can do that.
Training and a clear pathway to employment is what Mayor of Denver, Colorado, Mike Johnston, is focusing on as the city responds to the highest influx of migrants per capita in the U.S.
So by the time they reach that 6-month mark, they have English language skills, they have digital skills, financial skills, they have relevant certifications, and they have on-the-job experience in the profession they want to enter. And now we've taken this crisis and made it into an actually incredibly important and useful workforce pipeline into our highest need professions here in the city, and we're really excited to get that launched.
Speaking there with Sean Ramaswaram in Today Explained, Mike explains how they're finding solutions at city level in spite of a lack of federal support. And like She Matters, they focus on one main goal.
I don't have a partisan solution here. There are solutions that work and those that don't. This is one that works. And I would say the most conservative members of my community will come to me and say, Mike, this is crazy. Those folks, when they arrive here, should have to work. And then the most progressive groups will say, Mike, this is unfair. Our immigrants who are here should be able to work. There's actually quite clear alignment on this idea. It's not complicated.
Migration is a complex issue, but when approached from the angle of employment, it becomes a little less complex. After all, human beings are the most valuable resource we have. A society that invests wisely in people will undoubtedly reap the rewards. That's all for now, folks. Feel free to get in touch via the comments section or on one of my social media handles. I love to hear from you.